Mystra is the goddess of magic, and together with the weave, she facilitates spellcasting down on Faerûn. This powerful goddess and her faith espouse the beauty and wonder of the arcane as they look to share it with as many people as possible. I'm Ben Dignan, and welcome once again to Religion in the Realms. It is important to note that I will be talking about the three different identities of the goddess of magic in the Forgotten Realms. The first will be Mistral, the goddess said to be born out of the conflict between Selûne and Shar at the beginning of creation. The second is Mystra, who was raised up immediately by a dying Mistral to replace her at the fall of the Netheril Empire. I will refer to her as the first Mystra. Finally, the third identity is Mystra again, though we know her human name to be Midnight before becoming the former Mystra's replacement at the tail end of the Time of Troubles. I will refer to her as the second Mystra. Titles. The first and second Mystra's given titles include the Lady of Mysteries, the Mother of all Magic, and Our Lady of Spells. Mistral's given titles were the same as both Mystra's, but included as well the Muse and the Hidden One. The second Mystra may go by a couple aliases. The first is Midnight, the name she held when she was a mortal human wizard. She may go by Mistral, harkening back to the goddess who first created and maintained the weave. Regionally, she is known as the Hidden One in Rashomon, where they hold Mystra in veneration with two other goddesses, Shantia and Myliki. Portfolio and domains. Mystra currently, at least as it was last written in 3rd edition, holds the portfolios of magic, spells, and the weave. Mistral held far more portfolios during the time of the Netheril Empire. They included Mystra's current portfolios, but also wizards, spellcasters, energy, creativity, knowledge, invention, song, time, and spring. Mystra's suggested domains for 5th edition are Arcana and Knowledge. Appearance and manifestations. Mistral looked like a human woman with prismatic hair, radiant skin, and eyes alight with blue fire. She wore blue-white robes of the finest and heaviest silk. The first Mystra was reported to never maintain a given form for long, instead being in a constant state of shape-changing. The second Mystra is described as an attractive human woman with long, flowing black hair and radiant skin. When it comes to actual weaponry, the second Mystra wields 7 whirling stars. These magical weapons function mechanically like shurikens or throwing stars from 3rd edition. These shurikens have a magical +5 bonus to hit and hold the keen, returning, and shock and spell storing properties. When it comes to their avatars, Mistral and the first Mystra were fond of manifesting as a prismatic will-o-wisp on Faerûn that shaped itself to look vaguely like a humanoid. The second Mystra, however, is more partial to adopting the form reminiscent of her prior human form. In this guise, the avatar wears simple, dark-colored robes made of the finest silk. She wears a clasp upon her bodice. This clasp is designed to look like a spider's web. This is a signifier of both the weave itself and the position Mystra holds over it. When avatars could still roam the surface of Faerûn, Mystra's avatar would repair wild magic and dead magic areas. Mistral made use, and the second Mystra may make use of the following 2 manifestations. The first is a blue-white pulsing light that appears on items, creatures, or in places that they want to give attention to. The second is a disembodied graceful human hand bordered by blue-white motes of light that may point, gesture, write, or inscribe on stone and or cast a spell. This manifestation has been seen inscribing the stone tombs and graves of powerful dead spellcasters. Now I think it's safe to assume that the first Mystra would use both of these manifestations as well, just that it's never been documented in any proper sourcebook. Mystra and her faith may make use of the following creatures associated with her: Agathanons in natural and magical object form, devas, meruts, light asimons, Anhiriar, a former prominent wizards and spellcasters, hope, faith, and courage incarnates, radiant mephits, all gardenals, holophants, gem and metallic dragons including steel and mercury dragons, pseudo-dragons, selkies, blue jays, sparrowhawks, white cats, dogs, donkeys, horses, pegasi, unicorns, and mules, all with blue or mismatched eyes, and other small creatures made of translucent magic. Mystra may also show her favor or disfavor with the appearance of the following inanimate objects: blue and clear gemstones of all varieties, rainbow tourmalines, amarathas, rogue stones, and belgerols. Abilities. Before we get into the specific mechanical abilities the second Mystra has access to, I think it is important to touch on the weave and Mystra's deep connection with it. Mystra is said to be one with the weave. The weave is a metaphysical overlay and barrier over at least Faerûn, if not the whole planet of Toril itself, that allows each spellcaster to manipulate and access raw magic safely. Without it, spellcasters would be subject to unstable surges or restricted bouts of the energy that allows for spellcasting. The weave exists and flows through the vast majority of everything animate or inanimate. There are pockets of wild magic and dead magic and shadow weave created by Shar, if the shadow weave still exists in any capacity, but they are rare in occurrence. Mystra can deny access to the weave for any creature, both mortal, immortal, and or divine. As a reminder, the mechanical abilities I touch on both for the second Mystra and her avatars are taken from 2nd edition and 3rd edition sources, so they may need to be tweaked to bring them into line for the current 5th edition game. Both statistically and lore-wise, Mystra is one of, if not the strongest deity in the Faerûnian Pantheon. The only being to outrank her is the overgod Ao. Should she choose, Mystra can deny any new spells or magic items that go against her personal leanings. However, she barely ever intervenes in such matters, unless said creations prove to be a threat to the weave or magic itself. The first Mystra created stricter guidelines in the realms to limit spells only up to that of 9th level. This was done after Mistral had to sacrifice herself to maintain the weave after Karsus cast his 12th level spell. We will talk about that event soon. Mystra can cast any spell of any level from any school of magic. Since Mystra is a greater deity, she always rolls the highest result on any dice rolls in every facet of the game. Mystra's divine senses reach out to a distance of 18 miles, which is approximately 29 kilometers, allowing her to sense anything within that range. This range also allows her to sense out from any of her worshippers, holy sites, objects, and or locations associated with her, or anywhere her name or one of her titles was spoken in the last hour. What's more, she can split this divine sense equally to sense out from 20 different places at once. Without fail, she can block the divine senses of any deities who shares a similar divine rank to her or lower. Mystra holds a portfolio sense that allows her to sense any spell, spell-like ability, or magic item that draws on the weave 10 days or 180 days before it happens, while it is happening, or she retains the memory of such things up to 10 days later. She immediately learns of the creation of any new spell or magic item. Mystra can create any magic item. Mystra helps to protect high-level arcane spellcasters by cursing anyone who attempts to use a spellcaster's unique sigil or rune. Mechanically, at least in older editions of the game, a high-level spellcaster is anyone who is of 10th level or higher. Anyone trying to imitate this rune potentially may come under the threefold curse of Mystra if specific saves are not made. The individual may potentially lose 2 points of strength permanently, 2 points of intelligence permanently, falling under the effects of a feeble mind spell, and or 2 points of wisdom permanently, while losing all bonuses stemming from a high ability score for a month. Since Mistral held a portfolio of time along with magic, she governed the use of time travel. Any time travel did not go unnoticed by her, and she easily could deny such travel to anyone. She developed the time conduit spell specifically so that time travel occurred under those parameters she put in place. Even after she perished, the first Mystra still maintained the strict guidelines over time travel that Mystra had in place. I would also assume the second Mystra does so as well. But both Mystra's focus was and now is solely on magic and the weave, no longer time. It is spelled out that this spell canonically will not let anyone change the past. Should they enact changes through the spell in the past, they then travel back to the present day, only to find when they return to the present timeline that it is unaltered. Though it is called out that ultimately the decision to make the past alterable through the spell falls on the Dungeon Master. Mystra's avatar can cast any spell of any level from any school of magic. The avatar can have up to 2 offensive and 2 defensive spells employed in a given round. No spell can affect Mystra's avatar unless she allows it. The range, duration, damage, and/or area of effect of any spell cast by the avatar is tripled. Likewise, saves against any of Mystra's avatar's spells are made with a -3 penalty. The avatar can manipulate the shapes of a given spell's area of effect with ease, for example, turning a sphere area of effect into that of a cube. Should the avatar ever run out of spell slots, she can easily just access the weave and cast 1 offensive and 1 defensive spell per round indefinitely. Personal history. In the early days of creation, Shar and Selûne would come into conflict over providing warmth and light for Shantia upon the world of Toril. The 2 goddesses would fight out amongst realm space in a conflict known as the War of Light and Darkness. Selûne tore a piece of her divine essence away from her and threw it at her sister Shar. Her aim was true, and some of Shar's divine essence was torn away. Both essences of light and dark combined and formed Mistral, who would go on to form the Weave. Despite a shared bond with both Selûne and Shar, Mistral would become allied with Selûne. Selûne was dearly wounded from this exchange with her sister, and as a result, her power was greatly diminished. But with Mistral now on her side, Shar was forced to make an uneasy truce and retreated into the darkness to recover. After the battle between Shar and Selûne, Mistral would construct the Weave, allowing creatures down upon the surface of Faerûn ready access to magic. Despite Mistral being long gone, Selûne still seems to have some influence on the Weave. The Weave seems to ebb and flow based upon the phases of the moon. Areas of concentrated magic will appear on nights with full moons. Looking up from the ground, the moon will take on a blue hue in such areas. Now, just thinking out loud as myself here, it stands to reason that if Selûne has some influence on the Weave and a connection with it, it is very possible that Shar does as well. Mistral was born out of both of their divine essences after all. This may be why Shar was able to create the Shadow Weave and succeed in challenging the Weave far better than any other deity to my knowledge. Mistral would instruct the first spellcasters on Faerûn while teaching some of the races of the continent how to wield magic. Thus her power and influence grew, allowing her to become one of, if not the strongest deity. Long after, in -339 Dale Reckoning, a Netherese archwizard named Karsus developed a 12th level spell called Karsus's Avatar. This was the first and only 12th level spell to be cast in Faerûn. The spell would allow Karsus the ability to steal away a deity's power temporarily. Being as overly ambitious as he was, Karsus decided to steal Mistral's power, not recognizing the terrible consequences that would arise. The Weave faltered as Karsus was unable to control it in Mistral's stead. Thus wild raw magic began to surge throughout Faerûn. Mistral would sacrifice herself in a final act to return the Weave to its former balance. In order to do so, though, Mistral had to cause all magic on Faerûn to cease function for a few minutes. This is what caused those floating Netherese cities unable to escape in time to come crashing down to the surface. By negating all magic temporarily, Karsus's link to Mistral was broken, killing Karsus instantly as his bloated corpse was petrified and plummeted down to the surface. Feeling the weave begin to sunder as she fell, Mystra was able to reach out and reincarnate herself into a young human woman who was just learning cantrip-level magic at the time. Quickly, this new goddess, now known as Mystra, repaired the weave and rescued the 3 last remaining floating nethery cities who had yet to hit the ground. Following this event, the first Mystra denied the use of any magic spells above 9th level in Faerûn, though there are still ways to access 10th level magic, but we will get to that. Mystra found all the notes and records of Karsus' spell, and cast them all out on an unending journey through the cosmos. Either during, before, or after the Age of the Dawn Cataclysm, roughly from negative 339 Dale Reckoning to 760 Dale Reckoning, 2 immensely powerful wizards would battle for several years to win the favor of the first Mystra. These 2 were Savras, who was then a lesser deity, and Azuth, who was still a mortal spellcaster. I'll have more to say about the competition between these 2 in their respective episodes. For now, though, it is enough to say that Azuth won over Savras. We will talk about the title Magister later on and its importance to both Mystra's and Azuth's faith. Azuth would imprison Savras inside an artifact known as the Scepter of Savras for a long time after his victory. During her time as Goddess of Magic, the first Mystra will begin choosing select individuals to become her chosen. Some of these are some of the more well-known personalities in the Forgotten Realms, like Kelbin, Blackstaff Aronson, Elminster Almar, and Samaster, the founder of the Cult of Dragon, who formerly was a chosen of Mystra. Specifically, there are a group of all-female chosen known as the Seven Sisters who are deeply tied to Mystra. There's far more to say about them, and we will get around to talking about them later on. Before she became the second Mystra, Midnight was a human wizard born as Ariel Manx. She was later given the name Midnight from her social circle of bards, thieves, and spellcasters. After a fling with a sorcerer who introduced the arcane to her, Midnight was enamored and deeply curious about spellcasting. She would then become a worshipper of Mystra, serving as an acolyte for some time before realizing that that life wasn't for her. Midnight would refine her skills as a wizard, and she always felt as if there was a presence around her from time to time, especially when she labored over spells that were proving too difficult for her to learn. Midnight was convinced that this was Mystra, and Midnight felt as if the goddess of magic may think her to be a fine suitor for the title of Magister. Midnight did become restless as she studied at a Mystran temple in Deepingdale. She had the feeling as if something was awaiting her. Then the time of troubles occurred, and Midnight joined an adventuring party composed of the cleric Adon and the then mortal thief Cyric and fighter Kelmvor. During the time of troubles, all the deities of the Faerûnian Pantheon, save Helm, fell down to the surface of Faerûn in their avatar forms. The first Mystra would come to be imprisoned by Bane at Castle Kilgrave until she escaped thanks to the help of Midnight and her companions. Mystra there and then almost killed Bane. Mystra would make her way to the Celestial Staircase. Mystra strode up the staircase with the intent to get past Helm, who guarded the way, and back to her divine realm in the Outer Planes. Eo had put Helm in place specifically to unerringly and dutifully follow the Overgod's commands to not let any one deity make their way back to their Outer Plane realms. Perhaps knowing that she might not survive an encounter with Helm, still in his deific form, the first Mystra gave a portion of her power to Azuth and her chosen. The first Mystra died at the hands of Helm. A massive explosion was caused by Mystra's death, destroying the surrounding area, save those protected in a wall of force spell cast by Midnight. Much as had happened during Mystra's death, magic went awry in Faerûn for some time after the first Mystra's death. Her energy mixed with the world, causing wild magic areas to produce in some places and dead magic zones to occur in others. Even years after the second Mystra ascended, not all these areas across the continent had been repaired. The first Mystra released the remainder of her power throughout the weave. She also found the mortal human wizard Midnight, and the first Mystra presented her with a holy symbol known as the Pendant of Mysteries. Some essence of the deceased Mystra was combined with this holy symbol that Midnight wore. As Midnight traveled, this pendant began to merge with her skin, imbuing her with this essence. Bane would be eventually resurrected by Mercule, since Bane was not ultimately destroyed. Bane started rallying Zental Keep to attack Shadowdale. Their Midnight's adventuring group aided Elminster in the defense of the city. Bane and Elminster did battle, as Elminster summoned a ghostly form of the first Mystra to aid him. Together they nearly destroyed Bane, but some of his essence remained behind. Elminster would be tossed into a rift and presumed dead for a little bit of time. Bane defeated once more, Midnight's adventuring group pressed on, but not too soon after escaping that they were wrongly charged with the supposed murder of Elminster. Cyric helped in falsifying this charge against his former companions as he now switched sides. Learning of the position of one of the Tablets of Fate in Tantris, the group made their way there. Their adventuring group would recover the first Tablet of Fate as Bane was finally destroyed, though not entirely, by Torm. The adventuring group of now just Adon, Midnight, and Kelmvor learned that the second Tablet of Fate was next to be found at Dragonspear Castle in the Highmoor. As a brief aside, Kelmvor and Midnight would become romantically involved during their various quests throughout the time's troubles. Separately, Baal and Cyric would both chase down this group, ending in their fateful encounter at Boreskir Bridge. Baal did manage to snag Midnight for some time, though Midnight's group were able to escape, while Cyric and Baal did battle. Midnight and her companions arrived at Dragonspear Castle only to learn that Mercule had prepared for their arrival. Plus, the second Tablet of Fate was not on the Prime Material, but hidden away in Mercule's then realm of the Bone Castle on Hades. Of course, Mercule could not return to the Outer Planes, so he tricked Midnight into retrieving the tablet from there. Mercule would then abscond to Waterdeep with tablet in hand. Pursuing the tablet, the group would encounter Mercule once more as the god of the dead was wreaking havoc upon the city of Waterdeep. With the assistance of Elminster once more, another important battle took place atop Blackstaff Tower. With help from a previously unknown essence of the former Mystra, Midnight would destroy, though not entirely, Mercule with a disintegration spell. Since Mystra's essence worked through Midnight's spellcasting and the pendant she wore, she was able to, quote-unquote, destroy Mercule, since she held a modicum of divine power. Though Cyric seized the opportunity to kill Kelmvor, wound Adon, and steal the Tablets of Fate for himself, running off to the top of Mount Waterdeep. With the tablets in hand, Ao granted Cyric divinity, though not too soon after, Mystra and Adon arrived pursuing their former companion. There, Ao offered Midnight the mantle of Goddess of Magic. Midnight at first refused, but Adon convinced her, stating the need for her to provide resistance against Cyric, who was now a god himself. The second Mystra still holds the personality of Midnight centrally, but she has also absorbed the past memories of the first Mystra. In 1368 Dale Reckoning, Mystra brought Cyric to Kynalshire, the courtroom of the Faerûnian Pantheon, to answer for the disappearance of Lyra. Of course, Cyric would reveal that he had slain Lyra and subsumed her portfolio of illusions with the assistance of Mask. Though he hadn't really, though that is a tale for another time. The gathered deities at Kynalshire could not easily protest against Cyric's actions since he was acting well within his given portfolios at the time. Though in response, Mystra forbid Cyric's access to the Weave, disallowing him from casting spells, though he still retained his godly abilities. Mystra and Cyric would later do battle as Cyric attempted to free Kezef, the Chaos Hound, in Pandemonium. Cyric was freeing Kezef to sniff out what he thought to be the missing soul of Kelmvor. Mystra would be wounded significantly and forced to retreat, though these wounds were not enough to really threaten her life. Mystra would later be brought to trial in Kynalshire herself. This was because she was hindering Cyric from performing his duties to further his given portfolios. This was without any consideration for the balance that all deities present across the alignment spectrum are meant to maintain. Thus, Mystra was operating well outside her bounds as Goddess of Magic. Mystra relented and returned Cyric's access to the Weave. All during this time, Mystra was aware of Cyric's plans with the Serenishad, his brainwashing magical tome that would force even gods into obeying and following Cyric after reading it or hearing it read aloud. In order to counter that plan, Mystra allied herself with Mask and Dogma. Tempting her with knowledge of Kelemvor's soul, Mask was able to convince the goddess of magic to aid in the uprising of the City of the Dead. Mask wished to steal away the portfolio of deception from Cyric. Cyric, meanwhile, obtained knowledge of a forbidden spell from Dogma's library without hindrance. After all, every deity is allowed access to Dogma's resources freely. Mystra went out to the various gods and convinced them not to intervene in the uprising of the City of the Dead, as it was in her portfolio to stop Cyric from casting forbidden magic. With the uprising successful and Cyric unseated as Lord of the Dead, Kelemvor was freed from Cyric's broken sword and took up that mantle. At that time, Mystra and Kelemvor would be reunited, and the two of them would restart their romantic relationship, though only for a short time. A couple of years past those events, now in 1371 Dale Reckoning, Cyric was called to Cynosure once more to defend his inability to maintain his portfolios thanks to Mask's machinations. While Cyric had been failing in his responsibilities, he was able to convince the council of other deities that if he was to be on trial, so too should be Mystra and Kelemvor. Rather than be impartial, Kelemvor and Mystra had been favoring the good peoples of Faerûn for the past couple years. Thus they too were charged with the inability in maintaining their portfolios and roles in the Pantheon. Meanwhile, the Serenishad plot was still at hand down on Faerûn. Mystra would try to influence and interfere with the trial a couple times, resulting in her imprisonment by Helm and Tyr. Mystra and Kelemvor both ended their romantic relationship at this time as well. Kelemvor saw the error of his ways and adopted a new persona as a neutral lord of death, wearing no emotion. Mystra could not accept Kelemvor's new persona and perspective. Through one of his servants, Mask freed Mystra from Helm's imprisonment. Cyric, Mystra, and Kelemvor would later come to trial. Mystra now had a new perspective on remaining impartial and deciding who had access to her weave. The charges would be dropped against Mystra and Kelemvor. Both were able to convince the assembled deities that they now knew their place and responsibility in maintaining the balance and operating within only their portfolios. In 1385 Dale Reckoning, aided by Shar, Cyric would make his way into Mystra's realm of Dwelmarheart and murder her. With the weave sundered, magic became unruly and wild. The spell plague was set off across Faerûn and it spilled out into the outer planes. Several spellcasters were driven mad or were outright destroyed. Multiple places were destroyed across the continent as magic ran amok. All Forgotten Realms deities in the outer planes also suffered as almost all their realms were destroyed. Thankfully, the greater deities were able to preserve their realms, now out in the astral sea, as lesser deities made their way to the saved realms in refuge. For roughly a century, the weave was no longer present throughout Faerûn, though Elminster was able to return Mystra to some divine standing by providing her with silver fire he had absorbed. Recently, two of Mystra's chosen, the Symbol, Simrustar, Oglamir, had perished, and in finding their corpses, Elminster brought in the silver fire that had been gifted to them from the goddess of magic. Mystra would remain in hiding, while the shades of Tuatha and Shar once more tried to claim the weave for themselves. Elminster and other chosen of Mystra were able to defeat the shades as their floating city came crashing down upon Myth-Drannor. As Shar tried to capture an exhausted Elminster, Mystra finally unveiled herself from hiding to openly proclaim her control as goddess of magic once more. In the present days of Faerûn, I think it is safe to assume that Mystra now operates in the same capacity that she did as the goddess of magic and as the or one of the most powerful deities in the Faerûnian Pantheon. Personality. As long as Mistral and the different identities of Mystra have been present in the Forgotten Realms, they have always been listed as greater deities. Though I don't know what divine rank the second Mystra might have held during the spell plague, severely diminished and hidden as she was. perhaps a title like a quasi-deity or vestige might qualify. Mystra was a chaotic neutral goddess. She was said to have an exuberant and creative spirit, aiding not just spellcasters but artists and inventors of all types. She was a flirtatious, energetic, and mercurial goddess. She could be gullible at times, but hit back doubly so when reacting against those who had offended her. Usually she aimed to do what was right in most situations. The first Mystra was a lawful neutral goddess who concerned herself with upholding the laws around magic after the fall of Mistral. She kept herself out of moral debates about the use of magic, espousing a balanced approach. Magic itself being a neutral force, uncaring of who or what makes use of it. The second Mystra is a neutral good goddess. As mentioned before, she initially took issue with evil beings accessing the weave and forbade a substantial number of them from using it. Now she understands that she needs to hold a balanced perspective despite her own personal feelings. Personal realms. In the Great Wheel cosmological model used for 1st edition and 2nd edition, and is the assumed model for 5th edition Forgotten Realms, the second Mystra resides on the neutral good outer plane of Elysium. There her personal realm of Dwemerheart exists upon the second layer of the plane known as Aronia. Elysium is a place of ease. It is the neutral good outer plane. The plane is patrolled by powerful neutral good celestials known as Gardenals. The layers of the plane can be reached via the plane-spanning river Oceanus that makes its way throughout all 4 layers. Elysium has an inherent entrapping property that can cause people to never want to leave the plane due to its innate good and pleasantness. An entrapped individual after enough time will forget their past life as they embrace their new life here on Elysium, refusing to leave. The layer of Aronia on Elysium is composed primarily of mountainous terrain. Here the weather is far more unpredictable and less pleasant than it is on the other layers of Elysium. In Aronia, the plane-spanning river, the Oceanus is rapid and wild, with several waterfalls spilling off from it and down the mountainsides. Initially, the second Mystra resided on Mechanus, in the former Mystra's realm. The second Mystra found herself a flat, empty space atop a plateau in Aronia where her neutral good leanings would be welcome. Here she created a magnificent realm city called Dwemerheart from powerful magics. Each day the shapes and features of the city are changed as the magic that sustains them begins to fade away and are replaced by new spells. A body called the Council of Wizards are in charge of making sure the layout of the city remains the same. Buildings, paths, roads, etc. all remain in a fixed place, just that the Council rewards a different spellcaster each day with the opportunity to change the decoration and look of Dwemerheart. Just touching on former goddesses of magic, the first Mystra resided on the lawful neutral outer plane of Mechanus. As a chaotic neutral power, Mistral resided on the plane of Limbo. All 3 goddesses of magic have always called their specific deific realm Dwemerheart. In the World Tree cosmological model used for 3rd edition Forgotten Realms, Mystra resides and presides on a plane known as Dwemerheart. This plane inherently enhances magic to the point that spells are enlarged, extended, and empowered. This does not incur any loss of additional spell slots for the spellcasters. Mystra can, however, cancel out any of these spells at any time cast on her plane. Petitioners who come to reside on this plane look much as they did in life. Most of Mystra's petitioners are sorcerers and wizards. The Player's Guide to Faerûn for 3rd edition says that they only retain a fraction of their former power, which seems like a big difference compared to the spellcasting abilities of Mystran petitioners described in the Great Wheel. Dwemerheart itself is a magnificent city built atop a high plateau. The buildings here glitter and are built from magic itself. Mystra's realm encompasses the entire city and the surface of the plateau. The city looks like a massive magical academy. This is one of the foremost places across the plains to come seeking any sort of magical knowledge. Unfortunately, with Mystra so significantly reduced in power to the point of non-existence, and the destruction of Dwemerheart after Cyric's attack, There is no divine realm to speak of in the world axis model used for 4th edition. Allies and allegiances. Mystra has a couple deities that fall under her authority. The closest one to her is Azuth, the second Mystra's personal advisor. It is said that Azuth was the affectionate consort of the first Mystra. This may likely be because of the long history Azuth shared with the first Mystra and their shared lawful neutral standing, compared to that of the second neutral good Mystras. The second Mystra's relationship with Azuth is said to be that of a professional and cordial nature. Savras falls under the supervision of Azuth, thus Savras indirectly holds Mystra as an even higher superior. If Velsharoon now exists after the Second Sundering, it is unsaid whether he still holds a tenuous alliance with Azuth. For a time before the spell Plague, Velsharoon was under the protection of Mystra, though he still held a secretive alliance with Talos. Mystra is on friendly terms with Dogma, Denir, and Malil. Selûne has always had a strong relationship with whomever is the current goddess of magic. From Mistral, who some call a daughter of Selûne, right through to the second Mystra. Mystra has an alliance with Kalimvor still, though I wonder just how strong it is given the strain that has been put upon it since the two had to abandon any notion of continuing their romantic relationship. Outside of the Faerûnian Pantheon, Mystra has an alliance with other regional and racial deities who hold the portfolio of magic. Such deities include Corellon Larethian, head of the Elven Pantheon, also known as the Seldarine, who holds magic alongside other portfolios. She also holds an alliance with Isis and Thoth, both from the Mohalrandi Pantheon. The drow goddess Illustrahi has a close relationship with Mystra as well. This is likely why Kulue Veladorn, one of the Seven Sisters, was allowed to be chosen for both goddesses. The elven god of time, Labellus Enareth, held an alliance with Mistral. Mistral and him shared a portfolio over time. Despite the current Mystra no longer holding that portfolio, Labellus still maintains the alliance. Even outside of realm space, the first Mystra held an alliance with Wejas, the Greyhawk lawful neutral goddess of magic and death. Though that relationship deteriorated, it is no longer held between the second Mystra. The second Mystra does not hold a similar philosophy. Enemies. Mystra's chief foe in the Faerûnian Pantheon is no doubt Cyric. This is unsurprising given the past events that have transpired between Cyric and the second Mystra, both when they were mortals and during their tenure as deities. Personally, I think the next in line for her chief foes is a toss-up. It's either Bane or Shar. Bane long coveted the first Mystra's portfolio over magic and plotted continuously to claim it for his own. This carried over to the second Mystra, even after Bane's rebirth. Shar had concocted her own version of the weave known as the Shadow Weave with the intent to subsume the control of all magic herself and take over Mystra's role. Shar also aided Cyric in murdering the second Mystra to set off the spell plague. Talos is a lesser enemy who, under the alias of Malik, likes to seed wild and destructive magic into the world. Though his machinations have not nearly been as strong as Cyric's, Shar's, or Bane's, Talos would like nothing more to make wild magic one of his own portfolios. Deity and Avatar stat blocks. The second edition stat block for the second Mystra's avatar can be found in the Faiths and Avatars supplement. The third edition stat block for the second Mystra herself and her avatar can be found in the Faiths and Pantheon supplement. Symbols. Mistral and the first Mystra shared a blue-white star as their only known holy symbol. The second Mystra has the following 3 holy symbols associated with her. The first is a circle made up of 7 blue-white stars with red mist coming out from the center of the circle. I do postulate that these might be representative of the 7 sisters, but it's never stated outright if that's the case. The second is a circle of 9 stars with red mist coming out from the center. In this variation, it might be that 2 additional stars have been added to represent Kelvin Aronson and Elminster, given their status as chosen as well. Though that could not be the case, Mystra has had more chosen other than just the Seven Sisters and Elminster and the Blackstaff. The third symbol is the very same blue-white star synonymous with Mistral and the first Mystra. It is still held in veneration by the Mistran faith and can be used in worship of the second Mystra, though it is used rarely presently. The expectation being that any time a new symbol of Mystra needs to be created, it is to conform with the symbol now used to venerate the second Mystra. Central Dogma. From Faiths and Pantheons, a 3rd edition supplement. Quote, "Love magic for itself. Do not treat it just as a weapon to reshape the world to your will. True wisdom is knowing when not to use magic. Strive to use magic less as your powers develop, for often the threat or promise of its use outstrips its actual performance. Magic is art. The gift of the lady and those who wield it are privileged in the extreme. Conduct yourself humbly, not proudly, while being mindful of this. Use the art deftly and efficiently, not carelessly and recklessly. Seek always to learn and create new magic." End quote. Presence of the Faith. Mystra is worshipped primarily by sorcerers, wizards, bards, and other types of arcane casters. What's more, Mystra is favored by all sorts of worshippers over the alignment spectrum, though the second Mystra did cause a schism with evil aligned spellcasters initially, sending them looking for other patrons like Shar. Arcane spellcasters typically are not devout individuals though. Usually any sort of praise from Mystra is a word or two when a spell is cast, though a more thorough way to praise Mystra is through the sacrifice of an item, specifically one enchanted with a weak enchantment, then burned. The second Mystra's clerics are specifically said to be of a chaotic good, lawful evil, lawful good, lawful neutral, or neutral good alignment. Mistral and the first Mystra had clerics from across all 9 alignments given their inclination to remain neutral in most aspects in the expression and use of magic. Mystra has several chosen. I am saving the Seven Sisters for later, but I will mention here Elminster and Kelvin Blackstaff Aronson. I don't even know where to start with Elminster, other than to say he and both Mystras have been involved in numerous past events, and he always has been very close with both of them. He is said to be the most powerful of all Mystras chosen. There was a time he, I guess, turned himself into a woman for some period of time and served as a priestess of Mystra. Then he and the first Mystra even adventured together for some time. He served as a foster father for 2 of the 7 sisters and helped to form the Harpers. The Blackstaff was a former Lord of Waterdeep and consort of Lariel Silverhand, one of the 7 sisters. The Blackstaff was nicknamed as such for the magic staff he carried. That item has since passed on, as well as the title. He presented himself as a dignified, though stern individual. Kelvin is thought to be presently deceased, though it is rumored he may not in fact be dead. Both these men have been deeply involved in several different organizations, including the Harpers and the Lord's Alliance, but going on will only lead me on a further tangent. There was a time when Samaster, the founder of the Cult of the Dragon, was a chosen of Mystra as well. The remaining divinity in Samaster would be driven from him when he was laid low by an avatar of Lathander. Other chosen of Mystra include Lady Simrostar Oglamir, presently deceased. She was an elven wizard and one of the first to become a chosen of the second Mystra. Queen Alovan of Ardeep, a moon elf, was once a chosen of Mystra and Cyanine Moonbow. She was driven insane by the silver fire presented to her by Mystra. Amarune Whitewave is a distant ancestor of the long-lived Elminster. Mystra has handpicked her to be Elminster's apprentice and to succeed Elminster in the future. Mystra, by and large, would appear to have the most amount of chosen compared to any other deity in Faerûn. Now, that may be because of the focus placed upon her in the setting in general. You know more about Mystra because of how important she is to the setting. Other deities, for all we know, have a good number of chosen who just go unstated. But there is a theory that postulates that the first Mystra was told by Eo to decrease the amount of possible power she had. Rather than cast it off or have it removed by Eo, Mystra instead began to single out given individuals down on Faerûn to become her chosen. As a result, so many chosen were made by the first Mystra. The chosen of Mystra have their own unique powers. These powers are referred to as the silver fire of Mystra borne by each of them. If you do want a detailed list and the mechanics of such powers, the 2nd edition sourcebook, The Seven Sisters, has you covered. For now I will touch on them here, but be aware these abilities are born out of 2nd edition mechanics. The powers include: they are supernaturally resilient to the point of having a constitution of 25. They are mortal beings, though can be killed in the traditional sense. Age will not diminish them, however. They are resilient to magic with a large bonus to their saving throws. They can detect magic at will. They are aware of their names and or titles being spoken anywhere on Toril, followed by the next 9 words that follow the spoken name or title. They can survive without sustenance and sleep for up to 7 days. They have selective immunity to 1 spell from each spell level, while at the same time they have permanently prepared spell from each level that they can cast silently at will without needed components. These then recharge every 24 hours. Effectively, they can manifest needed magical abilities to survive in a variety of natural environments, like water breathing or protecting themselves from harmful gases. Finally, they can harness the power of the silver fire in a long beam that passes through all material and magical barriers, doing a sizable amount of damage. Or they can form their silver fire into a cloud that repairs a dead magic area. Or they can use the silver fire to rid anyone nearby of magical or psionic enchantments. In the underwater realm of Seiros, Mystra's faith is the longest standing for any surface deity. It has been present here since the Age of Netheril, when Mystra was still presiding as goddess of magic and the weave. In particular, the Mystran faith is popular among some merfolk and Shalarin, a lesser-known underwater humanoid. Weave Glow is a special ability granted to Mystran clergy. Weave Glow allows a person to cause all or a certain portion of their skin to glow a soft blue-white. This dull light allows the person to read and see out to a distance of 5 feet around them. Mystrans tend to keep this boon a secret from non-Mystrans. The Mystran faith has deep ties with the Harpers. Hierarchy and structure of the clergy. The Mystran faith is not large. This has a lot to do with the various evil forces who seek them out and attack them. It has got to the point in the past that most of them travel in disguise. During the age of the Netherese Empire, this was because archwizards and the like disparaged support of any deity. It is primarily made up of humans, though other races are welcomed into the Mystran faith. The faith isn't made up entirely of clerics and traditional clergy either. Among their ranks are several bards, wizards, and sorcerers as well. There's likely a large degree of multiclassing among the faithful. Presently, all Mystran clergy may be referred to as servants of the mystery, or magerobes. During the reign of Mistral and the first Mystra, they were called Mistrels, Mistwardens, or bearers of mystery. After the first Mistral's death and the subsequent ascension of Midnight to take her place, there was no qualms made among the various temples of clergy across Faerûn. In fact, the transition was smooth and without issue. Those who were clergy and clerics of the like of the first Mystra still were respected and held their standing, even if they had such differing alignments. Those who did not take to the second Mystra's leanings had moved on to serve other deities. The structure of the Mystran faith separates itself into orders that have achieved specialization in one school of magic over the others. This sort of structure has been in place even since the time of the Netheril Empire. The relationship between these different orders and sects is strong and friendly. Higher-ranking clergy in the Mystran faith are known by the honorific Lady or Lord of Mystery. The different titles and ranks given to Mystrans vary from temple to temple throughout the continent, with no one standard. Such has been the case since Mistral presided over the weave. Responsibilities and duties of worshippers. Mystran places of worship are to serve as archives for arcane knowledge of all sorts. This is done with the intent to allow magic to persist even should cataclysmic and apocalyptic events occur across the continent. Mystrans travel abroad teaching others spellcasting while leaving spell tomes, scrolls, magical items and the like around for others to discover. They may leave items in places as mundane as a simple village to a dangerous lair in the Underdark. This is done to combat those spellcasters who are fond of hoarding their magical knowledge to themselves. They are more concerned in tracing where such items of power are rather than the faith itself possessing them. But most current Mystrans lean towards removing certain items of power from immensely evil, irresponsible, and/or incapable individuals and creatures. Mystrans are to defy and help others in defying those who may restrict the use of magic across the continent. They are to also combat those who use magic as a means to rule as a tyrant. Mystrans are to keep watch of particular individuals who they know who might develop into powerful spellcasters. Mystran clergy are expected to craft magic items and/or spells of their own creation. This is to further and continue the practice of magic. So long as the responsibilities of Mystran clergy are fulfilled, Mystra is pretty relaxed on how they conduct themselves in their private lives. Each tends to have their own individualistic goals to pursue outside of their professional life. Orders and priestly bodies. The Seven Sisters are 7 actual sisters who are all spellcasters and chosen of Mystra. Each of the 7 share silver hair, tremendous intelligence, and are mortal unless killed outright. Not all 7 are alive in the traditional sense, but I will touch on their individual status one by one. The 7 sisters were chosen all by the first Mystra. The death of the first Mystra and subsequent ascension of the second Mystra did nothing to affect any of their powers. Just know that this is a brief overview of the 7 sisters. They don't operate as an organization or have the same goals. They are just 7 women who share the same common and divine ancestry. There's far more to be said about each of them. Storm Silverhand, the Bard of Shadowdale, a leader in the Harpers. She resides up in the Dalelands and was last said to be aiding a reeling Mordenkainen, yes, the very same archwizard from Greyhawk. Silune Silverhand, the Witch of Shadowdale, former wielder of the Scepter of Savras. Silune died when protecting the city of Shadowdale from dragons attacking the city in 1356 Dale Reckoning. Her spirit would continue on as a specific type of ghost known as a spectral harpist. But even she would sacrifice that form to end a Sharan rite in 1375 Dale Reckoning. She now exists in the form of a weave ghost. I will describe what a weave ghost is later in the DM section of the podcast. Literal Silverhand, Open Lord of Waterdeep, former leader of an adventuring band known as the Nine, and consort of Kelvin Blackstaff Aronson. Currently, she resides in Waterdeep. Illustrial Silverhand, former High Lady of Silvery Moon and High Lady of the League of the Silver Marches. Long thought to be deceased, is now operating in the southern regions of Faerûn in some capacity. Dove Falconhand, former ranger and knight of Myth Draenor who resided in Cormanthor with her husband Florin Falconhand. Renowned for her skill in arms as a ranger. Dove died in 1487 Dale Reckoning, battling and taking down an Eye Tyrant Beholder along with her. She now exists as a weave ghost. The Symbol, the Queen or Witch Queen of Aglarond, though known by very few as Alasra Silverhand. Said to be the wildest and most temperamental of the 7. On several occasions, she single-handedly beat back Thaans attempting to attack her nation. She sacrificed herself in 1479 Dale Reckoning to heal and give Elminster her silver fire. It is unknown if she carries on in any other capacity, like some of her deceased sisters. Quelue Veladorn, the Dark Sister, High Priestess and chosen of Ilstray as well. I will describe how she was related to the other 6 sisters in a bit. She was killed in 1379 Dale Reckoning trying to destroy a Baelor's spirit deeply connected with the fall of the Drow. She exists as a weave ghost, though is given free rein to enter and leave Illustre's divine realm. The first Mystra took the necessary efforts to have the 7 sisters birthed. Personally, I think the steps she took were a little strange and a little messed up, but I state them here nonetheless. Mystra had previous issues with former Chosen when she gifted them powers that came with that title. By purposely having children born to her preferences, they may prove less troublesome when granted their powers and titles as Chosen. Now, all the 7 sisters are related, though I don't know if you can consider Kulue a full sister to the rest of the 6 biologically. Deity magic always tends to muddle things up. All 7 share the same father, Dornall Silverhand. Mystra purposefully chose Dornall to be the father of these Chosen. Dornall was a former harper and noble near Neverwinter. Mystra would possess the body of a half-elven woman named Elue Shundar, whom Mystra knew Dornall fancied. Mystra did reveal to Elue that she would bind with her for the specific goal, and Elue would agree to go along with it. Dornall and Elue would eventually wed in 760 Dale Reckoning. Then each year between 761 to 767 Dale Reckoning, 6 daughters were born. Dornall would eventually learn that his wife had been bound with Mystra. While the last of the 7, Kulue, was still in the womb, Elue's health was clearly deteriorating and she looked deathly ill. However, Mystra would not let her die and instead sustained her to the point that she could almost be considered a lich. Don't ask me how an undead creature sustains a fetus, but we're dealing with deity level shenanigans here, so I'm not going to overthink it. Dornall learned from a priestess that some powerful intelligent force had taken over his wife. Deeply unwell himself, Dornall took action one night and swiftly cut off his wife's head with his blade. Mystra had to then reveal herself to Dornall. Dornall, unsurprisingly, did not take any of what Mystra told him well and would go off on his own for 20 years as an adventurer disowning both his family and his title. Now Mystra had to find some way to keep the unborn Kulue alive. Simply put, Mystra extended her senses and found another mother nearby, a drow worshipper of Illustrei. This drow woman was carrying a stillborn fetus, and Mystra asked Illustrei if she could allow the fetuses to be exchanged. Illustrei agreed to this, and thus Kulue would be born as a drow, not a human like her other 6 sisters. The remaining 6 sisters were motherless, and thus Mystra felt it for some reason it was fitting to split them from one another and have them raised separated, though some of them remained together in pairs. In fact, Elminster was tasked with raising Laeral and Dove Silverhand. When his mortal death faced him one day in 797 Dale Reckoning, Dornall called out to Mystra to remember who he was. Mystra was moved by this gesture and granted Dornall a new existence. Dornall was given a new form, and he now goes by the name of Dornall the Watcher. Dornall searches out new Chosen of Mystra and deals with potential issues related to the weave. It isn't expressly stated what form this is, but I imagine it looks like his regular human self, possibly with some defining traits tying himself to Mystra visibly. The Magister is a mortal spell-wielding champion of magic who serves Mystra and is guided by Azuth. Azuth himself becoming the first Magister sometime before 136 Dale Reckoning, when the first record of the second Magister is given. Numerous beings have held the title of Magister, and not just humanoids either. In the past, typically the title of Magister was rewarded to a successful contestant who defeated the current Magister in a spellcasting duel. It did not necessarily need to be to the death. Plus, a successful win in such a duel must be upheld by Azuth's decision. Azuth is easily able to deny any winning challenger the title of Magister, should Azuth feel the duel was conducted unfairly. There are methods in place to choose a new Magister should the previous one die or abdicate. There's only ever one individual who holds the title of Magister at a time. The Magister also exists as yet another Chosen of Mystra. Though the 2nd edition supplement Secrets of the Magister details the history, office, and powers of the Magister, That supplement specifically calls out that the Magister cannot be chosen a Mystra. Should Mystra desire to make a current Magister a chosen, that Magister must then give up the title. Mentioned in the Magic of Faerûn, a 3rd edition supplement, it said that the second Mystra asked Azuth to change up the selection process of choosing the Magister. Now the chosen of Azuth are to nominate those who they think deserving of the title. Azuth himself then decides who should then become Magister. I assume the second Mystra asked for these changes given her difference in alignment compared to that of the first Mystra, and disallows any evil individuals from having the title. It is stated that Azuth may still award someone as Magister if they beat the current Magister in a legitimate mage duel. The Magister is not a defender of the weave or Mystra. Rather, they are to promote the art throughout the Faerûn. They accomplish this by succeeding in any task they are given by Mystra or Azuth, and by furthering their aptitude and skills with the arcane. If you are genuinely interested in further knowledge about the Magister, there's a whole 2nd edition sourcebook about the office of the Magister called Secrets of the Magister. The Magister is to be assisted by both the Azuthan and Mystran faiths, so long as the Magister provides the necessary proof of identifying themselves. Members of Severus' faith disagree with independence the Magister is allowed to act with, but reluctantly will provide needed services if required. The Magister is gifted with some strong powers, and I will just touch on a few of them. After they get the title, they are temporarily immune to all magic for a period of 4 to 7 months. They are well aware of any given magic effects occurring nearby them. They can never fall to their death, as Featherfall is unconsciously cast to protect them and they can levitate at will. They can Dimension Door and Water Walk up to 6 times a day each. They have True Sight. They have an innate resistance to magic spells. And finally, there are 8 other innate abilities past that. The last recorded Magister I was able to find was Talatha Verovri. She died in 1385 to Reckoning. The Knights of the Mystic Fire are a Mystran order of paladins that attach themselves to other Mystrans when seeking out hordes of magic. The Knights also make up the bulk of armed guards that protect Mystran places of worship and study. The Order of the Shooting Star is an order of Mystran rangers who serve as scouts and spies for the faith. They often deal with magical mishaps and happenings that summon all sorts of malign creatures to the prime material. Together, the Knights of the Mystic Fire and Order of the Shooting Star have roughly 500 members. The Children of the Starry Quill are an organization of Mystran bards who gather information and sow rumors for the faith. They also spend a substantial amount of time preserving and researching arcane knowledge in libraries across the continent. Some of those from this organization are also Harpers. The Dwemer Keepers are Mystrans specifically tasked with the protection and repair of the weave. They also are deeply involved in their own spellcraft and magic item creation. Often they are Cleric Wizard or Cleric Sorcerer multi-classes. Apothecars are alchemists by trade in the Mystran faith. They train for and have a specialized knowledge in fabricating and identifying potions, salves, ointments, elixirs, and the like. Apothecars are proud of their station but can be rather eccentric due to their overexposure of alchemical compounds. Monitors are a watchful group of clergy tasked with tracking the use of all sorts of magic, while attempting to prevent any abuse of magic. They will confiscate and destroy malfunctioning and or cursed magic items. They may end up defending mages in court should they find such mages have been unjustly charged. Monitors tend to have a lawful neutral approach to their station, reflecting the previous attitudes about magic that the first Mystra held. They are an analytical group with keen perception, but tend to come off as stern and abrupt. The Sorority of the Silver Fire is a small group of 20 or so female human and half-elven spellcasters. They are devoted wholly to the destruction of the things the Master has wrought since he fell from being a chosen of Mystra. Chief among these things being the destruction of Dracoliches. Their battle isn't expressly with the Cult of the Dragon per se, but of course their goals and actions will conflict with those of the Cult of the Dragon. The Touched are a group of unaligned spellcaster whom Mystra has contacted directly to serve her in some capacity for a short period of time. Mystra will observe these mages from afar, and should she like their character, reach out to them with an offer, usually making a use of a manifestation to communicate. The touched receive small boons from Mystra, but nothing is major of what her chosen or the Magister wields. These abilities tend to come and go and can be rather cryptic at times, though these abilities are always accompanied by a quick visible manifestation of Mystra's blue-tinged silver fire. The tasks attached are given vary widely, from conducting some research into some obtuse or rarely explored field to openly confronting the actions of others politically. The touched are often given the ability to cast lower level spells at will when they have succeeded in their objectives. The Pursuivant Arcane are a secretive body of Mystran spellcasters who work independently and never openly. They receive additional spells from Mystra, much like a reduced cleric, on top of their existing spells that they memorize and learn. They are given missions from Mystra through visions. The spells that they are granted are used for divinatory and identification purposes, while also being able to cast Wraith form once every 10 days. Pursuivant Arcane can also attract the attention of Mystra or Azuth directly to address something of importance to their mission. The Pursuivant does this by either calling out the god's name or simply tracing the deity's symbol with their finger on a surface while quietly speaking their name. Weave Spinners are a group of informal Mystran wizards who deal with dead magic and wild magic zones, recharge and place out magical items, and combat creatures who specifically target spellcasters. Weave Spinners arrange and host mage fairs for spellcasters to come together. Weave Spinners will work together and have a specific hand sign to address one another. At the end of this hand gesture, a glimmer of Mystra's symbol appears on the palm of the Weave Spinner's hand. Much like other Mystrans, Weave Spinners also attempt to solve magical mysteries. They can cast Locate Object at will and can discern how long an enchantment has been in place. The Guardians of the Weave is a loose organization of spellcasters who combat evil spellcasters, the evil deities of magic, and those who look to damage the Weave. Specifically in the 3rd edition era of the Forgotten Realms, they were at odds with Shar and her followers as they fought incursions of the Shadow Weave throughout the continent. The group is bound by a love for magic, and they do not want to see the Weave harmed to any extent. The symbol of the Guardians is a golden web held within a circle to represent the Weave. Members may display this as a brooch or amulet, or keep it hidden, but each member's symbol serves as a way of tracking one another. The Knights of the Weave are Mystran warriors who are devout protectors of the Weave. They receive their magic directly from the Weave, thus their magic's arcane in nature compared to divine magic typically wielded by paladins. Many come from either the Guardians of the Weave, the Mystran faith, or the Azuthan faith. Fighters and paladins often become members of this group, but some sorcerers and bards may join as well. The knights may study arcane knowledge, though theirs is an innate form of arcane spellcasting that comes from within, rather than honing it, say, like a wizard does. Theirs is a small group with not many members. While they are not an order of paladins per se, they are often treated as such. There is an existing friendly rivalry between them and actual Mystran and Azuthan paladins. Mystral did not have many orders or organizations in support of her faith. There were a handful of wizarding guilds that were tied to Mystral's faith. They would act as informants to the clergy, providing information about new arcane developments throughout Netheril. Like the Order of the Shooting Stars, Mystral's faith had an order of rangers known as Mystral's Eyes, fulfilling the same role. It might be possible that they were the progenitors of the Order of the Shooting Stars. Likewise, the Collegium Mysterium performed the same function as the Children of the Starry Quill. The Order of the Blue Moon is a small group of Selenites and Mystrans who combat Shar and her faith. They derive their name from the appearance of a blue full moon in the sky. This happens periodically when the weave fluctuates and causes a strong concentration of magic in a given region. Their chapter house, known as the Hall of Reflected Moonlight, is hid amongst the red rocks north of Waterdeep. Though they use the House of the Moon Temple in Waterdeep as their base of operation for their day-to-day operations, they are not well known outside of the Sword Coast region of Faerûn. Their strength seems to grow in power while the moon is full, and it is then that they act, for when the moon wanes, their powers do become diminished. The Watchful Order of Mages and Protectors is a guild of Mystran and Azuthan sorcerers and wizards in Waterdeep. Other than being a guild, their headquarters, the Tower of the Order, serves as a magical academy, and members police magic use within Waterdeep. Members could also receive extra pay by volunteering to fight fires with magic or help to guard against any magic attacks on the city. Appearance and dress. The ceremonial dress of the Mystran clergy is a simple blue robe, sometimes accented with white trim, that can be accompanied by a deep blue cloak for those found in colder climates. A piece of blue headwear is worn as well, though this differs from locale to locale. Some may wear a simple skull cap, others may wear ornate and ostentatious helmets or hats. While adventuring, Mystran clergy wear armor suited for them and bear shields with Mystra's symbol upon it. In service to the first Mystra, the Faith would wear veils or masks to reflect the mysterious nature of magic. This practice has since been abandoned. If traveling in disguise, Mystrans often portray themselves as merchants in caravans. Apothecars wear the usual blue robes of the Mystran faith and always have a silver holy symbol around their necks. Apothecars tend to look like mad scientists, though, with unkempt or frizzled hair, and are accompanied by the strong scent of chemicals. Their hands are also stained in places from the variety of chemicals they use in their profession. Monitors wear the usual blue robes and holy symbol of the Mystran faith, though their robes are softer to allow for greater movement. Mystral's clergy wore similar apparel, though their robes were known to sparkle and glow, or display flashes of prismatic color. Rather than wear any headwear, all members typically grew their hair long, though they often wore some ornamentation in their hair where it met the nape of their neck. They bore the blue-white holy symbol either upon a ring or pendant. Their dress often featured scepters and mantles akin to what other wizards would wear. Rituals. The clerics of Mystra are to pick one time of the day or night to pray and or meditate on their spells and stick by it. The holiest day on the calendar currently for Mystrans is the 15th of Marpenoth, when the second Mystra ascended to become a goddess. In Waterdeep, the 15th of Marpenoth is known as God's Day. A festival is held around the House of Wonder, the Mystran Temple in Waterdeep. They finish off the festivities with a magical fireworks show that goes well into the night. Although in 5th edition sources it says that this holiday in Waterdeep is a solemn affair where magic is to be limited only to be used in self-defense or dire need. This is done to serve as a reminder of the damage magic can do, given what transpired in the city during the time of troubles. The Starflight ceremony involves the casting of a fly spell by several Mystrans all at once. This allows an individual to fly through the night sky as long as the stars are visible. The Starflight ceremony is often performed when two Mystrans are wed or an initiate is welcomed into the faith. Though it can be performed when there is the need to survey the surroundings, provide privacy for discussions of importance, or give Mystrans distance from the surface to try out spells. The Mage Fire ceremony involves a surging forth of blue magical energy reminiscent of fire through someone's body. The ritual's intent is to renew and cleanse the body. Should enough Mystrans participate in the rite, an individual can be cured of a whole variety of diseases, conditions, and curses. An individual lays down amidst a circle of fellow Mystrans. Those encircling then pull their power into the individual as blue mage fire illuminates their body. The individual begins to slowly rise above as they crackle and hum with the energy of the mage fire. Should the ritual be performed correctly, it is ended with a Starflight ceremony. Those subject to mage fire describe it as one of the most blissful things that they have ever experienced. Both the Starflight and mage fire are ancient rites that have existed since Mystral's time. The hymn to the lady is usually a funeral rite for Mystrans, though it may be sung at mage moots. A plain dirge is sung while visions manifest of long-dead Mystran mages and clerics. Mystra may insert her own visions at this time as a form of guidance for the living Mystrans. An alternative version of the Mage Fire ceremony may be performed after the hymn to raise up the dead towards a floating pyre. The time of weaving was the most important holiday celebrated in the former city of Mithranor on the 3rd of Alessius. This holiday is celebrated by the wizards in the city, both by honoring Mystra and Corellon Lorethian. It is also the anniversary of when the Mythal was put in place to defend Mithranor. General locations of places of worship. It is common for Azuthan clergy to visit, teach, and advise in Mystran temples. The same can be said for Mystran clergy who likewise travel then to Azuthan places of worship. Mystran places of worship are enhanced by the weave so that Mystran clerics may manipulate their spells with a metamagic effect without expending some other resource. That little bit of information is from a 3rd edition sourcebook, so I'm not entirely sure how metamagic in that edition compares to my understanding of it in 5th edition. Mystran places of worship double as storehouses of arcane knowledge with their own hidden libraries, warded laboratories, safeholds, and stashes. Most magic items stashed in such places are of a more esoteric rather than practical nature. Mystran places of worship vary widely in size and style. Some shrines may be found in natural caves or grottos. Many Mystran sites have an open courtyard to hold services during the day and a place to view the night sky. Specific places of worship. The House of Wonder in Waterdeep can be found in the sea ward of the city. This temple's courtyard has a large mosaic of the second Mystra symbol, ornate towers, and varieties of magical displays. Directly in the center of the grounds is the tower which houses the temple proper. It has a strong relationship with a local Selûnite temple called the House of the Moon. It served as an arcane college during the Spellplague era, but has returned to its original purpose as a house of worship and arcane practice. Related specifically to Mistral are the powerful and ancient time gates. Whether these gates were created for their specific purpose or were accidentally created is unsaid. Either way, Mistral and both Mistras have seemingly allowed them to persist and function despite their forgotten status. Passing through one of these gates creates an effect as if the time conduit spell was cast, allowing people to time travel to a given time in the past. These gates are tremendously old, even preceding the first Dwarven realms. The first time gate is said to be hidden in a cave guarded by an ancient white dragon somewhere amongst the spine of the world. The second is recorded as sitting atop Miskin's Peak in the Novalaran mountain range. However, the peak of this mountain was sheared off long ago by the Great Glacier. Now the second gate is buried beneath the slow-moving Great Glacier. The third resides within Mount Andrus near the city of Cedarspoke in the Guthmere Forest. The fourth is protected by the Elves of Sonoria out on the Moonshae Isles. The Elves have recorded nothing of this gate, and they ensure no one abuses it. Whether they have used it before is unknown. This gate is nothing but a simple arch that leads into a cave behind waterfalls along Mirror Lake. An unnamed shrine to Mystra can be found in Shadowdale, and it is described as such. Sitting in behind the Temple of Tymora is a low step pyramid consisting of only 3 wide steps. The top stair is inscribed with Mystra's symbol in silver into dark stone. No clergy currently presides over it, and it is left to the local worshippers to take care of it. Initially, there was a desire to build the shrine on the ruin of Selûne Silverhair's hut. You will recall Selûne is one of the 7 sisters who died defending Shadowdale. That was disallowed by local authorities, so it was built where it stands today. The shrine stands at a place where one can see the hut's ruins as well as the top of Elminster's tower. A local rumor and legend proposes the idea that anyone standing atop the shrine can be heard by Elminster in his tower, though this has never been confirmed. The House of Mysteries is a Mystran temple in Elventree. It is housed in a ruined, overgrown stone hall. This temple is said to be the strongest place of Mystran power in all of Faerûn. Within, sound is deadened as whispered voices can be heard in the dark, unlit chambers, save from the occasional light provided by a colored mote of light that might drive by. No spell here can illuminate these dark chambers. Out of the dark can be heard the voice of the goddess, the voice of a high-ranking Mystran clergy member who presides over the House of the Mysteries. The voice can provide answers to questions with cryptic advice, identify magic items, and potentially cast spells from an unknown source upon Mystrans looking for aid. Now in other sources, this place is known as the Cairn of Mysteries. These sources then describe that the temple is presided over by a mysterious wizard known as the Sentinel who wears a mask at all times. No clergy reside here permanently, but those who pass through often stay for a small amount of time to ensure the proper duties are attended to that the Sentinel cannot do as a wizard. Now, despite this conflicting information, I'm sure you can choose to combine both descriptions or go with one over the other. The largest Mystran temple is an unnamed temple located in Mount Talath in the Magiocracy of Halrua. This temple is housed in a large cavern complex. Around the outside of the temple are stone spires that jut up alongside the mountain slope. The temple has many magic item storerooms and libraries of all sorts. However, only Halruans known to be supportive of the Mystran faith are given free admittance to such resources. Non-Halruans may be allowed access, though there may be some substantial fee attached. Even then, there is rigorous magical screening to prove you are there for appropriate reasons, and an escort is attached to you. There is free public admittance to the temple proper, however. Now, the latest information I have access to speaks to how this temple proper exploded and blew fire at the advent of the spell Plague. A shimmering mirage of sorts of a temple was all that remained behind. But since Halrua has returned from Abir following the spell Plague, I have to wonder what state the temple exists in. Likely it is back where it once stood. The Magiocracy of Halrua in general are strong adherents of both arcane magic and the worship of Mystra and Azuth. Many Mystran clergy members double as judges for the nation. There is a Mystran temple for each of the 8 schools of magic, conjuration, necromancy, etc. in the Nath mountain range. There is at least a shrine to Mystra in every Halruan village, and every town and city houses a temple. Now, I believe all this may still be true in present-day Faerûn, since Halrua protected itself from harm during the spell Plague. The wizards here teleported the nation to Abir, harnessing the blue fire, only to then return during the Second Sundering. When the wizards teleported Halrua, they swapped the land with that found in the Shadowfell. The dancing place is a pilgrimage site, not just for Mystrans, but for a host of deities who appeared when the Harpers were founded for a second time in this glade in the High Dell. Alongside other clergy, Mystrans maintain the glade while providing services to all good-aligned adventurers. Minsoran was a series of 4 theocratic cities established around the Lake of Wang in 300 Dale Reckoning. Each town was devoted to one specific deity: Selûne, Shar, Lathander, and Mystra. By 600 Dale Reckoning, these 4 cities had been abandoned after a freak blizzard passed through, and the inhabitants were slain by a white dragon. During Netherel's height, only one temple to Mystra was allowed to exist across all the floating cities. The Temple of All Mysteries was built upon the floating city of Ilulam. As the only temple to Mistral, it constantly increased in membership to the point that it was relocated and rebuilt to be greater in size 7 times. It was built to resemble a many-pointed star, likely reminiscent of Mistral's holy symbol. 7 points of the star reached out across ground level, while 8 points of the star were jutting out into the air at different angles. The temple itself was placed in the exact center of the star. Hidden beneath the Thayan city of Byzanter is a Mystran temple. This is a refuge for harpers, runaway slaves, enemies of the Red Wizards, and the like. Several underground tunnels are connected to this temple, and are used as secret passageways. An image of Mystra is housed here, and this image is thought to be actually protecting the temple from the Red Wizards, given it has yet to be found. The Halls of Mystery is the Mystran Temple in Raven's Bluff. This temple looks like a castle from the outside. It is guarded by helmed horrors, and bolts of arcane energy pass along the outside walls occasionally. Unique to this temple is a pit filled with glowing blue-white slime, which the clergy immerse people in when in need of healing and nullifying other negative magical effects. The Temple of Balance is the Mystran Temple in Silvery Moon. It is a minor temple that is reminiscent of a wizard's tower. Here arcane and divine spellcasters work their magics together, forming all sorts of strange magical effects. Mouse Alley, as its name suggests, is not a place of worship, though it is an important place in the Mystran faith in the city of Waterdeep. Long ago, Mystra had shapeshifted herself into a mouse for whatever reason, and was scurrying about Waterdeep. She came across the archwizard Ergaron, and the wizard followed her into this alley only to discover it was the goddess of magic herself. Now Mouse Alley serves as a place of refuge for any Mystran wizard who is looking to hide. Upon entering into Mouse Alley, they turn invisible, have spell slots restored, and learn that they can dimension door away should they choose to, thanks to whatever magic suffuses the alleyway. Not strictly defined as a temple, the Witch's Hall in the Rashimi city of Imilar is still considered a holy site sacred to Mystra, or the Hidden One as she's known in Rashomon. It is a whitewashed longhouse whose crossbeams are carved to look like dragons, hounds, and unicorns. Only the Hathrans, also known as the Witches of Rashomon, are permitted entrance in here. Name temples to Mystra without further detail. The Weave Mistress's Hearth, likely in the ruins of Myth-Draenor. Southorm's Tower in Halara. The House of Mystra in Harrowdale. The Tower of Mysteries in Saerloon. And Sevashel Tor in the undersea city of Myth-Nantar. Unnamed shrines to Mystra can be found in Darloon and Procamper. Character options. For 2nd edition, the Apothecary and Monitor Priest variants can be found in Warriors and Priests of the Realms, as well as an option for Mystran Crusaders. Guidelines to make a Magister NPC and PC can be found in Secrets of the Magister. A breakdown for the Mystran Specialty Priest, the Dwemer Keeper, can be found in Fates and Avatars. For 3rd edition, the Dwemer Keeper Prestige class can be found in Fates and Pantheons. The Sword of the Arcane Order feat, Mystic Fire Knight substitution levels, and Shooting Star substitution levels can be found in Champions of Valor. The Initiate of Mystra feat and Blessed of the Seven Sisters feat can be found in The Player's Guide to Faerûn. Guidelines to making Magister NPC and PC can be found in the Magic of Faerûn supplement. As I do in every episode, the following is now a breakdown of the features I think someone deeply involved in Mystra's faith as an acolyte or otherwise would have for their background in 5th edition. For their 2 skill proficiencies, Arcana and Investigation, though you could swap Investigation easily enough for Religion. Language or tool proficiencies, 2 languages of your choice. For your equipment, there's the Acolytes in the Player's Handbook, the Cloistered Scholars from the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide, and the Sages from the Player's Handbook. Though with the starting gold you get with those last 2 backgrounds, you could easily remove some of that gold and take a holy symbol to start. For the ribbon feature attached to the background, there's the Shelter of the Faithful from the Acolyte, the Library Access of the Cloistered Scholar, and the Sage's Researcher. Moving on to a list of subclasses that I think would be thematically appropriate for a NPC or PC to take if they are a worshipper in Mystra in 5th edition. For the Bard, there's the College of Lore from the Player's Handbook. For the Cleric, there's the Knowledge Domain from the Player's Handbook, and the Arcana Domain from Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide. For the Fighter, there's the Eldritch Knight from the Player's Handbook. For the Paladin, there's the Oath of Devotion from the Player's Handbook, and Oath of the Watchers from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. For the Ranger, there's the Horizon Walker from Xanthar's Guide to Everything. For the Rogue, there's the Arcane Trickster from the Player's Handbook. For the Sorcerer, there's the Divine Soul Sorcerer from Xanthar's Guide to Everything. For the Warlock, there's the Celestial Patron from Xanthar's Guide to Everything. Finally, for the Wizards, given Mystra's portfolio, all the Player's Handbook Wizard subclasses would be included here, the War Wizard from Xanthar's Guide to Everything, and the Scribe's Wizard from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. Dungeon Master Options. To start, we're just going to touch on some monsters and NPCs that a DM can make use of in their games. From the Monster Manual is the Deva, all the Metallic Dragons, Pseudo-Dragons, Pegasi, Unicorns, Cat, Mastiff, and Mule. From Mordekainen's Tome of Foes, there's the Marut. From Baldur's Gate Descent into Avernus, there is the Hollyphant. I would like to talk about some non-5th edition monsters that we know the faith of Mystra and Mystra makes use of. The Anhariar are celestial warriors who fell in battle as humanoids. Of course, these celestial warriors might be known to you better through Norse myth. Indeed, they have a large presence on the outer plane of Ysgard. They can be found in the 3rd edition supplement Deities and Demigods, 2nd edition's Monstrous Compendium Outer Planes Appendix, and Planescape Monstrous Compendium Appendix, and 1st edition's Manual of the Planes. Agathanon are celestial warriors whose true appearances are reminiscent of elves with radiant skin and eyes. They show their true appearance in the upper planes, though elsewhere they take on other forms. Often this form is that of a human. But they have the ability to turn themselves into another creature and even inanimate objects. In an object form, Agathanons confer certain benefits to those who hold it. They are often sent to the Prime Material to help goodly creatures fight off evil forces. The 1st edition stat block can be found in Monster Manual 2. The 2nd edition stat blocks for them can be found in Monstrous Compendium Planescape and Monstrous Compendium Outer Planes Appendix. Light Asimon are celestial amorphous creatures seemingly made of multi-hued radiant light. When looking upon a light Asimon, a good aligned person is said to be able to see a reflection of their finest moments in their life. They can serve as familiars for high-leveled, good aligned spellcasters. There is a unique ritual that may be attempted to call upon the aid of a light Asimon. They are thought to be the embodiment of good in physical form. The 2nd edition stat block for them can be found in Monstrous Compendium Planescape and Monstrous Compendium Outer Planes Appendix. Incarnates are beings formed from the pure energy of a given concept like courage, hope, or faith. Those 3 are specifically said to be creatures tied to the Mystran faith, but there are several other types of incarnates including evil ones. They can be found throughout all the outer planes, but of course the good aligned ones are prevalent in the upper planes. Courage, hope, and faith incarnates are of a lesser type of incarnate. Incarnates bond with creatures who are strong in the trait they embody and can confer benefits to the host, while the incarnates feeds off the emotion put out by the individual. Technically, a bonded incarnate can control the host against their will. However, that is a tactic utilized almost entirely by evil incarnates. The 2nd edition stat block can be found in Monstrous Compendium and Planescape. Radiant Mephits are a variety of mephit, native to the quasi-plane of radiance. This quasi-plane exists in the transitional space between the elemental plane of fire and the positive energy plane. These silvery mephits look to be in a perpetual state of blissfulness. They are easily distracted creatures. The 2nd edition stat block can be found in Monstrous Compendium Planescape. Gardenels are the animalistic celestials that inhabit the neutral good plane of Elysium. They watch over the various layers of the plane and are peaceful and pleasant. But away from Elysium they take on a different disposition and combat evil in all its forms. They don't have a distinct hierarchy like other outer planar creature groups, such as devils, demons, and angels. But they observe the leadership of the lion-like Leonels. 2nd edition stat blocks for various Gardenels can be found in Monstrous Compendium Planescape 2. Their 3rd edition stat blocks can be found in 3.5's Monster Manual, and other Gardenel stat blocks can be found in the Book of Exalted Deeds. Gem Dragons are the neutral line group of the major true dragons. They are renowned for their various psionic abilities. All 5 varieties and their various stat blocks can be found in 3rd edition's Monster Manual 2. Mercury dragons, as their name suggests, are mercurial creatures and are quite whimsical, as they talk extremely fast to the point of being misunderstood easily. As adults, they reflect light so well over their silvery scales to the point that they might blind others. They can even manipulate their bodies to the point of giving off a blinding ray of reflected light offensively. Their breath weapon is that of brilliant yellow light. The 2nd edition stat block for them can be found in Monstrous Manual. Their 3rd edition stat block can be found in Dragons of Faerûn. Their 4th edition stat block can be found in Draconomicon 2, Metallic Dragons, but they are described somewhat differently in 4th edition. Steel dragons are an unusual type of true dragon preferring the company of humanoids and living in urban settings. They disguise themselves as humanoids themselves as they make their way through urban life in given identities. They always show at least one steel-like trait in this humanoid form, like gray eyes, or wear some type of steel ornamentation. Their breath weapon is a cube of toxic gas. They lair in their humanoid abodes where they keep their hoard well guarded. They prefer staying in their humanoid form compared to that of their true form. The 2nd edition stat block can be found in Monstrous Manual. The 3rd edition stat block can be found in Dragons of Faerûn. The 4th edition stat block can be found in Draconomicon 2, Metallic Dragons. Selkies are sea-like creatures with the innate ability to adopt a humanoid form for a few days. At a distance, it is easy to mistake a Selkie for a normal seal, though upon closer inspection, they have webbed hands and feet rather than flippers. Selkies shape change into humanoid form to curiously explore the surface world. They adopt a track of humanoid forms. They tend to lair together in large underwater caverns and grottos. The 1st edition stat block can be found in Monster Manual 2. The 2nd edition stat block can be found in Monstrous Manual. The 3rd edition stat block can be found in Fiend Folio. Weave ghosts are not described in any supplements or adventures, rather they are described in 2 novels, Death Masks and Spellstorm, at least according to the Weave Ghost page on the Forgotten Realms wiki. I don't have access to either book, so I cannot confirm this, but I do trust the citations on the Forgotten Realms wiki. As mentioned before, 3 of the deceased 7 sisters have since gone on to become Weave Ghosts. As the name suggests, this is an ethereal creature that has become one with the Weave. The individual still retains their individuality and thoughts. They could serve as messengers to the faithful or emerging out of Mystra magic items and altars alike. Weave ghosts can shape themselves to look like a variety of creatures and other items. To round out this section on monsters and creatures, the following are just a list of possible humanoid NPC stat blocks to represent various Mystrian worshippers and clergy. Keep in mind with spellcasters, you can always swap out their listed spells for other spells more fitting to the themes and story you're trying to get at. Around the Monster Manual, there's the Acolyte, Priest, Mage, and Archmage. From Voldo's Guide to Monsters, there's the Abjurer, Apprentice Wizard, Bard, Conjurer, Diviner, Enchanter, Evoker, Illusionist, Necromancer, and Transmuter. From the Lost Mines of Phandelver adventure and the starter set, there's the Evil Mage. And finally, from the Candlekeep Mysteries adventure book, there is the Master Sage, and Wood Elf Wizard. Following this, we'll just touch on some specific Mystrian magic items. The Scepter of Mystra is an unorthodox religious tome found in 2nd edition supplement Prayers from the Faithful. This scepter is made from glass steel with ever-bright electromens. Now, to touch on a couple of these terms briefly, glass steel, as the name suggests, is a translucent glass that is hard as steel. I do not know if it is unique to the realms in Dungeons & Dragons canon. Everbright is a distinct enchantment that can be applied to metallic pieces. As its name suggests, these enchanted metal pieces will always glow and never tarnish, with a couple other benefits to go along with the enchantment. Within the Scepter of Mystra are 10 small silver ovoids that float casually along the length of the rod. 9 of the ovoids are representative of the 9 levels of spellcasting spellcasters are familiar with. The 10th is representative of true Dwellmers or epic 10th level spells. When someone holds onto the ends of the scepter, they can make out numbers on 9 of the 10 ovoids, and on the 10th ovoid is the symbol of a star. It is mentioned though that should you be lacking in any material that describes 10th level magic and above, to just then allow the scepter to provide for an unusual, unpredictable, strange new magic never before seen. By pressing your finger to cover up one of the ovoids, you reveal a random assortment of spells associated with the spell indicated on the covered ovoid. One spell's name is listed on the other silver ovoids, and the spells correspond to the level of the ovoid covered. If someone releases their finger covering the ovoid and covers it once again, a new random list of spells appears. From there, the wielder can safely remove the covering finger and select one of the listed spells by pressing their finger to the corresponding ovoid. Hopefully that wasn't all too confusing. One end of the scepter will emit an illusion, writing out the spell description in the air, written in the words that look to be made of fire. The illusion can be dispelled easily by touching the corresponding ovoid again. The Scepter of Mystra also has a triggered ability by speaking Mystra's name when wielding it. Doing so will grant the holder an even greater version of the detect magic spell out to a distance of 90 feet. Along with perceiving magic auras, the person will also be able to determine the strength of the magic as well as how long its effect has been present. The Scepter of Mystra can be perceived by the Magister, Azuth, and all chosen of Mystra and anyone who currently has possession of it. The scepter was created with the intent to allow it to pass through the hands of mortals, allowing them to perform various deeds. Though it was never made with the intent of allowing it to fall into the hands of any substantial archmage or nation whose society is heavily influenced by arcane magic, like Halrua or Thay. I won't go into the other abilities of the scepter too much, but just to touch on them here. If dropped a substantial distance, it will teleport randomly to somewhere in Faerûn. It will rise and glow in the presence of unleashed offensive magic if not held. It can allow for higher level spellcasting than the user is capable of, though just once while it recharges. And if a proper prayer is intoned to Mystra, the scepter can recharge other magic items. The scepter was first led out into the world in 994 Dale Reckoning. Much like other magic tomes described in Prayers of the Faithful, it has passed through several hands. Many mages, mind flayers, adventurers, and finally in the talons of a silver dragon in 1336 Dale Reckoning nearby Succomber. Though there are rumors that the silver dragon may have been reduced to bones. Regardless, the whereabouts of the scepter are unknown presently. The following are just some thematically appropriate magic items from official 5th edition sources I feel the Faith of Mystra may have access to. From the Dungeon Master's Guide, there's the Wand of the War Mage, Amulet of the Plains, Carpet of Flying, Circle of Blasting, Cloak of Protection, Crystal Ball, Cube of Force, Cubic Gate, Deck of Illusions, Duplicitous Manuscript, Eyes of Charming, Hat of Disguise, Headband of Intellect, Helm of Brilliance, Helm of Comprehending Languages, Helm of Telepathy, Helm of Teleportation, all the various sorts of Ioun Stones, Mantle of Spell Resistance, Medallion of Thoughts, Pearl of Power, Potion of Flying, Potion of Gaseous Form, Potion of Mind Reading, Ring of Mind Shielding, Ring of Protection, Ring of Shooting Stars, Ring of Spell Storing, Ring of Spell Turning, Ring of Telekinesis, Robe of Eyes, Robe of Stars, Robe of Archmagi, Rod of Absorption, Staff of Charming, Staff of Fire, Staff of Frost, Staff of the Magi, Staff of Thunder and Lightning, Wand of Binding, Wand of Fireballs, Wand of Lightning Bolts, Wand of Magic Detection, Wand of Magic Missiles, Wand of Polymorph, Wand of Web, Wand of Wanderer. From Out of the Abyss, the Adventure module, there's the various spell gems. From the Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica, you could easily reflavor the Illusionist Bracers. From Waterdeep Dragon Heist, there is the actual Black Staff. From Dungeon of the Mad Mage, there's the Blast Scepter. From Tastra's Cauldron of Everything, the Arcane Grimoire, the Alchemical Compendium, Astromancy Archive, Atlas of Endless Horizons, Barrier Tattoo, Crystalline Chronicle, Fulminating Treatise, Librum of Souls and Flesh, Lyre of Building, Masquerade Tattoo, Planecaller's Codex, Protective Verses, and Spell Rot Tattoo. From Xanthar's Guide to Everything, there's the Enduring Spellbook, Instrument of Illusions, and Instrument of Scribing. And finally, from Explorer's Guide to Wildmount, there's the Grimoire Infinitus, Hat of Wizardry, Potion of Maximum Power, Ruby of the War Mage, and the Spell Bottle. Alright, thank you for listening to Religion in the Realms. If you're interested in keeping up the release of future episodes, you can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and follow the podcast Twitter account @RealmsReligion. These episodes are also uploaded to YouTube as well. The podcast YouTube page can be found under the title Religion in the Realms. Audio versions of the podcast can be found on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, and Google Play Podcasts. If you wish to get in touch with me with any questions or just want to chat, my personal Twitter handle is @ShivsEmbrace, or you can send an email to realmsreligion@gmail.com, all in lowercase. In the next episode, we will be covering Savras, the lawful neutral god of divination and one of Mystra's lessers and direct allies. Until next time, may Timora look kindly upon your dice rolls, Helm protect you, and Lathander light your path. Music for this episode: Lands of Magic by Ian Grimm,